on this computer. Okay, so let's find this thing here real quick. And so good morning. I am sitting here with my new friend, Graham Betchart. Graham and I were fortunate enough to cross paths just this past weekend. What's Friday? Oh, well, 6 days ago, I guess, or something like that. And Graham, I was fortunate enough to be asked to be an assistant coach of one of the basketball teams at Stephen Curry's last stop on Stephen Curry's Underrated tour. Graham, and I'm going to let Graham tell his own story, but Graham has been working with Stephan and his crew and his people for some time. I think Graham was specifically requested to participate and share his message outside of pure basketball, his mind-related messages. And I heard Graham speak. I sat in the room as I listened to him speak to the kids about being where your feet are. And I heard him discuss WIN. And this is, I shared with Graham, this is something I've been talking about for years. A gentleman who I used to work with, Berkeley High, Mike Grignani, talked about having a what's important now in our halftime locker rooms. And Graham I've extrapolated into my own book. Graham has extrapolated into his messaging. So it was almost like kismet, I think, that we crossed paths. And I happened to be sitting in the room at that time. You know, I had other responsibilities, but it was just great. And so I ran up to him afterwards and said, hey, I'd love to kind of get you on one of these podcasts that I'm doing for the Fifth Quarter Project. Of course, he agreed because he's a good dude. And since then we talked once. And so I didn't realize the depth of some of the messaging that Graham uses. He's worked with people like Aaron Gordon and of course, Stephan and LeBron James's team. So he's a stud, he's a star, and his messaging is star-like. So I'm going to play to you. One of the things he shared with me was that he incorporates music into his messages. So I'm going to give everybody about a 5-second take of Graham's music. And so, Graham, you're in control. So just take it away. I mean, take me through, what did I leave out? What should I put in? And again, we just decided we'd both be very extemporaneous. So
yeah,
take the floor.
No, you're on it, Barry, man. Thanks for having me, and grateful to be here. Super honored to do this work. And you know, for me, I've always felt called to working with kids. You know, my philosophy was always proactive mental skills training. So, you know, I met Aaron Gordon when he was 11 years old. You know what I mean? Most of the pro basketball players I worked with, they were kids. And so when Steph Curry's team called me and was like, hey, will you come do some mental training stuff at the camp and, you know, work with the teenagers, that's my sweet spot, you know? So go in there and be able to proactively introduce these skills, like what's important now, right? The song you were just playing, I'm in control, right? That's all about what's important now. You know, we literally say that in the song. So
you weren't singing, I know, though.
No, that's Rebecca King. She's amazing. She's a psychology student from England. I get called by psychology students all the time, and I met her 2 years ago, and we started talking about music, and she can sing, and I started talking to her about the philosophy. And sorry, there's a little noise.
That's all right. That's all right. The part of our lives.
Yeah. And she, you know, a big part of how I teach, Barry, is with music these days. Again, to reach kids, to reach people. Everyone's singing along the songs all the time. You know, affirmations and songs are all part of how we learn. And so I just started taking a lot of these teachings, like what's important now, and putting it to music and teaching through songs, you know. And I just thought it's a great way to reach people, and you can leave them with something to train, you know, because these messages we have, it is repetition. You have to practice all the time. You got to do it over. You got to say the words over and over again until it becomes an action, you know, and then you got to do that action consistently and be devoted to it. So music's just a fun way I'm just making music, and, you know.
I think it's genius, honestly. And again, as I try to go out and do what I try to do, and honestly, the people I most work with, you know, I was a high school basketball coach for a long time. And so I know some of those kids. My sweet spot at this point is some of those young people, whether everybody's younger than me, but after the playing days, you know, what, fifth quarter stuff, but they still need affirmations and focus and confidence and be where your feet are, because, fifth quarter is now, whatever happened in your career happened, great players, Len Bias died on the court. I mean, stuff happens. And so for me, I want to try to support those people, but I love the idea of music. So I'm going to shut up and keep listening, but I just want to say, I think it's very cool that you're doing that. I'm taking notes for my own messaging. So keep going.
No, I'm right there. It's been, in the last couple of years really helped with the music in a weird way, because, everything kind of shut down and it was tough to get out. I mean, doing this work at Steph Curry's camp, that was the first time that I've been in front of a group live like that in person in 2 years. So I had done everything on Zoom, and over the phone and FaceTime, and I'm able to record at my house. So the last 2 years, I just really hunkered down and made as much music as I could and practiced this stuff. And, it was also a part of me needed to keep growing. Yep. So making music was another thing to be bad at, to be vulnerable at, to have to go through that experience. And I actually started making music like 7 years ago, and I just slowly started working my way here to where by the time I sent you that song, it was 7 years of dedication to it. But I really needed something to give me something to grow with again. So music provides that for me, a place to be vulnerable. And I mean, just attempting, I'm trying to sing the hooks. I'm trying and it's so uncomfortable, but the more you practice, you do get better at it,
Yeah, there's no doubt. And when you sing like that person, that's a very high bar,
Yeah, Rebecca's amazing.
Oh boy. I mean, that's just it's a soul piercing, really kind of, right. It's already in my head now. I think I listened to it for 26 seconds, according to my timer. So,
okay. That's the goal. Honestly, the goal was for it to be in your head and you could sing with her. That's how we started practicing this and I've never met her in person. She lives in England. So we've done all of this.
Shut up. Oh my God. Cool.
Training each other over the phone and working and recording. And, we sent her recording equipment, and just slowly over time, so a really big concept too I work on is called walk to win. Yep. And walk to win means, man, the pacing we want things to happen is often immediate, but you have to get into that pace of how it works. And that walk to win allows you to stick with something. Like that song I sent you, 7 years of work, 2 years of working with her before that came out.
Wow.
So that's like 700 days.
Right.
For someone you've never met in person. And you just keep inching your way along, working together, spending time to slowly get to something. And by the time that happens, it looks like it might happen really quick, but really we had to have lethal patience and we had to walk to win. And that's one of the things I really try to work with kids on a lot. Everyone's in a hurry, Barry. Everyone is in a hurry. They just are, whether it's because they're anxious, they're worried, or they're so goal driven, they're trying to run to a result. All that stuff can pull you away. And so walking to win with lethal patience, just more philosophies to kind of help people, come back to where we are and kind of
be where your feet are.
Yeah, do the best we can. And we can still be driven and ambitious. We want all that, but we don't need to be filled with anxiety and all these things that just make it so we don't feel like we're enough here, so.
No, I get it. I want what type of patience?
Lethal patience.
Lethal patience. And
all I've done is just taken regular words and just tried to.
I love it. So tell me what's lethal patience. Give me an example.
For example, like that song I just sent you, took 7 years.
Got
you know what I mean? And so it's like, and the whole time I was making music, it's just the stages of it. And your mind is like, oh, I want to quit. I don't want to do this. Where's the result? Where's the outcome? No one sees this. And I had to remind myself, if I just stick with it, you can't be stopped. And so I just put the word lethal in there because I think of like Steph Curry, he's a lethal shooter or stuff like that. Just put a phrase that allows me to build an inner fulfillment so I can build my own momentum while there's literally no outside recognition whatsoever. And so you have to learn to drive it from within. And then by the time the outside sees me, I'm like, oh, that's 10 years of darkness by myself. And then now you get to see it. And so but it's that inner momentum. So lethal patience was language I would tell myself when I would do the work. I would work on music and I'd be like, great, that's it. And I was like, it's terrible and no one hears it. And I was like, great, but if I keep doing this, it's eventually going to be there. So that's just to me, mental training starts with language. It starts with understanding the simplicity of linguistics, because they'll draw you towards a focus. And we're always focused. It just may not be on the right thing. So lethal patience allowed me to find the pacing that literally was lethal. And I mean lethal, I'm going against self-doubt. I'm going against worry. I'm going against perfectionism. That's what I'm crushing. You know what I mean? That's what it's lethal against. Fear, all these things that hold us back, you know. Lethal patience devastates that stuff.
So that's okay. That's great context. That's what I was going for. So the lethal patience is actually killing the self-doubt and the fear and actually the negative forces that are kind of driving your way. Look, inside baseball, everybody, our call was scheduled for 15 minutes before we actually got this transmission here together, because for some reason my Zoom chat, I was on a Zoom call 2 hours before, and for some reason when I tried to get on with Graham, it didn't work, and I felt terribly. It's the first time we've interacted in this forum, and I called him and he said, "Barry, relax. All going to work out." And I'm old and I'm patient and all that, but you had and it was, even for me, an example of some lethal patience, because I did have anxiety about it. We don't really know one another. So I guess what I'm saying is you're walking the talk. So, which is why you're as good as you are. Again, we met in this forum where there were some,
can I add something about walking that talk, Barry?
Please. No, this is your show, man.
Okay, let me add something that's really important. I think there's a difference between motivation and devotion. So walking it for sure. That's the one thing I take credit for. I didn't make up words. I didn't make this stuff up, right? I didn't make up the clothes I'm wearing, the computer I'm on. When people say they're a made person, I'm like, what'd you make? You know what I mean? Like, I literally didn't make anything. But what I did do was stay devoted to this. And devotion is really important, because devotion is way different than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. I don't feel like doing this work every day. There's years where I'm like, wow, that was a hard 1,000 days and nothing was happening. But the devotion requires you to do it every day. When you go into service, which is what I've been doing, service allows you to receive information because you're clearly here to serve. And it's not I don't make transactional moves. I make service-based moves. And that means I'm going to do it forever. And so devotion allows you to stick with something. That's where the lethal patience, the walk to win, it's devotion, Barry. And devotion is the sweetest emotion. That's what I've noticed. So, you know what I mean?
I do. I mean, I love it, and I can't write quickly enough, so I'm glad this is being recorded. But so it was actually, so I'm glad you extrapolated on that, right? I'm glad you kind of opened it up, and I'm sure you could open it up more. But it does lead to what I was actually going to ask you. So we met, as I said, at this forum where there was a good sized collection, I mean, less than 100, more than 50, very talented young athletes.
Yeah.
They were part of, again, Steph's underrated tour, but, underrated is all relative, right? All these kids could play.
Yeah.
I mean, they could all play. And anyway, they could all play. When you're 16, 18, whatever, your focus can get hyper-focused, narrow on this thing that you're doing, because you could think that's my ticket, and staying devoted possibly to that is where your head is. But I think that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, look, Stephan talked about it, in one of his, gosh, he was there for almost 4 hours that one day. He just blew my mind. Another story for another day. But he spoke to the kids about, look, maybe you make your living playing this game. Maybe you'll make your living as a byproduct of this game, but, kind of stay the course and hang in there. But how do you, because when we met, I think I told you this, I was very happy to see one young man have the vulnerability to come up. I didn't see all your presentations, but the one I saw, one young man had the vulnerability to come up and actually sit next to you and speak with you on the stage. And it just warmed my heart, because I gave the kid credit for being vulnerable. And I know you talk about vulnerability, be vulnerable for victory or something.
Yeah, victory to the vulnerable. Victory
Victory
goes
to the
to the
vulnerable. I have a decent memory for an old guy.
vulnerable.
But so how do you take these, you understand the market, right? They're young people who, I haven't been young in a long time, but how do you get your message across to that? Because that's the gift that you have. But how do you do it? How do you keep be devoted to making them devoted or teaching them about devotion when you're so young? Is that a clear
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, one, you got to model what you're teaching, So Barry, I'm just teaching what I'm living, man.
Yeah.
And basically I'm just sharing. So I have an offering, and I got taught this stuff as a teenager and then devoted my life to it. And it wasn't till years later that I even learned about sports psychology or even learned
Mhm.
into that. So I'm just on this path myself of devotion. And when I say devotion, it's to life, right? And life's going to have you do a variety of things. It's not devoted to, say, just basketball. It's devoted to your spirit and devoted to where that needs to go and the growth and the places it needs to go. So I live it and just share what I'm living. Mental training now is super popular. 16, 17 years ago, there was no jobs. So, one, took 12 years to be an overnight success. I think people look at that, and then it's genuine coming from me. If I've been in here for 2 decades, it's just genuine. So, and I also do this is what I've noticed about teenagers. When you're working with young folks, is never give up on them. So I stay devoted to them. So proactive mental skills training is you don't wait for them to ask questions. You teach it to them. They don't know to ask most of the time, right?
Right.
So my devotion is to them. And some of the stories I shared was, folks like Jaylen Brown and Aaron Gordon. I met them when they were young, and they were both honest and said, "Hey man, we didn't quite understand what you were saying. Then as we got to be 19 or 20, stuff started to click." And they both were like, "Hey, I was thankful that you introduced it young and didn't give up, even if we were like just, kind of regular teenagers. So my work is to proactively give it to them, and that devotion is powerful. There's something really powerful about it. And I knew what I was teaching was genuine, and I've always known what I was teaching works. So there's also something to that, Barry, where I've always been like, I know what I'm teaching is helpful to you. And so there's a power to that. There's a genuine energy exchange in that place. So I've noticed that helped. And a few of the young folks that came to me, several of them have texted me since the camp.
Oh, good.
And I had some good experiences with applying being vulnerable and working on palms down, moving on to that next play. So it's nice to see that some of the stuff, as they start to practice it, the whole goal of a talk like that is to make them aware. Then they have to go practice literally the rest of their life. It's an everyday practice.
One day at a time, right? I mean, really,
That's it.
And again, I think that's our biggest challenge. I'm sitting here like, so now we met for, I don't know, 3 minutes, I mean, in person, maybe 5,
Yeah.
maybe 2, I don't remember. We've talked, of course, now, but now it's like, I know you, many years, I have a very, very similar philosophy. It's why I'm, old now doing what I'm trying to do, left another career behind because I think it's important. But these messages, look, these people are going to be wiping drool off our chin someday,
Yeah, totally.
and so forth. So I love the devotion part. When you're trying to get your messaging across, and anybody who winds up watching or listening to this, how do you get someone to trust themselves, right? To stay devoted? Because again, we live in I don't even know some of this, what's that, TikTok and this thing that is just flushed down everybody's throat. And here you are talking about real, but so how do you do it? There's an art form to what you do. And I know you're going to tell me I just stay devoted. I just keep serving, and I get it. I do. I really, really do. It's like what's the Stonecutters Creed?
Yeah.
That thing. Yeah.
But it really is. I mean, it really is reps, but there are some, there's no mystery. If you ask Steph Curry, how do you shoot that great? He'll be like, I've been doing it since I was 3 every day. Oh, so it's funny. So since we know that, it's basically, how can you deal with doing that? That's the secret.
Of course.
God, well, how do I deal with like that? How do I deal with, yes, it is going to take repetition to become great at anything, right?
Right.
So
Right.
with that, how does someone do that? How does someone connect to that thing? You try to help them connect to that light inside of them that's beyond motivate. That's that calling. You try to help them feel their spirit, and you try to live it yourself. So perhaps maybe it inspires them to tap into their own. I remember I had a teacher in college, Michael Mangan, my first year at Cabrillo Junior College. He was a history teacher, and he had so much passion. And I sat there in class and I was just overwhelmed. I was like, this guy, we're in some regular junior college basic history class, and this guy is crying after showing us a VHS video on a certain subject that he loved. And he was so passionate.
Wow.
And after he would talk to us, and I was like, okay, I have to find that. I'm not saying it's history, right? That he found
Of course, of course.
but I want to find the thing that calls me. And so what you do is you go on a journey to find that. And that journey is filled with falling on your face over and over and over again and getting rejected over and over and over again. But you just constantly put yourself out there. And the more no's you get, you have to tell yourself, good. The more no's I get, I'm getting closer to it. So by the time I found mental training, I had found sports law. I had found sports management. I had wanted to do all these things, and I went in and tried them and realized that's not really it. So I just over and over again would do that over and over again until I found the one that was calling me. And then when you find the one that's calling you, of course, it's incredible devotion. You got to stick with it. But the whole process before is like basically fail as fast as I can, as many times as I can. You're going to feel like vomiting, throwing up. It's the most uncomfortable experience, but you're going for it. So it's like you have to embrace this whole human experience of the exhilaration of it. And that's what I did. And every time I'd get a no, I would tell myself I'm getting closer and closer and closer. You have to block everybody else out because you'll get overwhelmingly questioned with what you're doing.
That's so my next question. So keep talking about that, please.
Yep. When I first started doing this, everyone thought I was crazy. So when you follow something inside of you that's not what society's telling you to do, and you kind of follow a spark, everyone's going to question it around you. And that questioning can provoke all kinds of self-doubt in you. So the first thing you got to do is accept they're going to question. That's part of the deal when you follow a journey. No one's going to question you if you go become a lawyer, even if your soul inside is like, I don't want to do this. This isn't it. But that's what, be a lawyer, be a doctor, which is fine if that's the spark calling you. It's not fine if that's not what it is, and it's for something else. So you embrace that, right? You embrace that there's this, people are going to say, basically, you're crazy. The first 4 years I was doing this, people said I was crazy. The middle 4, they went, wait a second, how are you doing this? Because after 4 years, they're like, you're still doing it. And they started to see things happen. So then the same people go, how are you doing this? By the 10th and 11th year, those same people are your biggest fans cheering you on. So it's the craziest experience. You have to be so connected to finding something, to going for it in life, so you stick with it. By the time everyone's cheering for you, you don't even need anyone cheering for you because you're already, you're honestly, you found source. You found your deepest connection and you're with it, and you hear the play. I hear clearly. And then I do what I'm told. First, when I was doing that, they said I was crazy. Now mental training is pop culture, and they're like, oh my God, how'd you know before? And I'm like, I didn't know. I just
listen to follow the heartbeat kind of a thing, you know, basically, right? I mean, look, it's funny. I have one, I told you I'm writing a second book, but a book I wrote behind me called How the Truth Will Set You and Your Career Free. It is exactly about what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to know how to really make your career work, start with what's the truth in your own brain.
There you go.
Not your Aunt Sally or your Uncle Jim or, your college professor, anyway, so I agree. I still think that, and again, bless you for what you do and the passion you bring to it. Because
I say something else, Barry, with it.
Yeah, please.
I put my competitive spirit to not listen to other people. You have to fight for it. And I gotta be real with it. It's like a warrior code, like the inner work. The best way to win a war is never fight a war. We know that. The best
Yeah.
way to never fight a war is you have to win the war inside. And the war inside is all the self-doubt. Like, what if your own family is like, you'll never do it? What are you doing? People you love. What if you're working with someone and 5 years later, they bail on you? And you're like, everything that I've done to build, totally lost. What if they threw $2 million at you to build an app and then everyone quit 14 months later? I'm just telling you what's happened to me.
I
So like
remember, yeah.
all this stuff, right? And so you have to be like, no matter what, I'm going to keep coming. And you have to have so much compassion for all the stuff around you that just totally self-destructs and totally falters. For me to be here at 44 years old doing this work, 3 of my classmates are here from graduate school. You know what I mean? I just keeping it real, like to make it in this field, to solely do this work took astronomical courage. And so, but I wanted it. I wanted to see what it was.
Well, yeah, courage, but a competitive spirit to see if you can do it. So courage, yes, but
competitiveness, but sometimes the courage is you can't force it to work fast.
Right.
So you could be driven and want to make it happen. And you're totally competitive, but you cannot make it happen. And you might say it might take 1,200 days before it happens. And you have to then be courageous enough to surrender to that pacing. And that's where I would compete at, like, oh my God, if I can get out of my own way that just wants to make it go fast and be goal driven and get up early and just make it so that's how it works. No, that's not how it works. And I would have to compete at that. And the inner battles I would fight, most intense stuff I've ever been through in my life, ever. And I learned to call it big wave surfing because the intensity is so intense that you have to embrace it in those moments. That when you start to let life come through you full-fledged and let the life force come through you full-fledged with service, it is, you can create overwhelm. That's how I made all the music. The creativity is so overwhelming, but sometimes you're like, how am I going to sleep? Because I can't even function, because I'm not in a normal system of like, I kind of don't like my work. I get up early, go through the day, work on a victim current. I'm on it. I'm on the wave of light. That shit never wants to sleep, Barry. And I had to learn to turn it off. And you're like, how do I turn off this faucet when you learn to turn it on? So there's all these other things that come when you learn to do this stuff. And you got to have people around you that can pick you up when you fall off big waves. And you got to have a team around you that knows how to put you back together. And you got to build with love around you. And you have to compete to help elevate everybody around you and not try to just beat everybody around you.
Wow, this is, I want you to keep talking, but I can't wait I'm going to send you a copy of this second book I'm writing, because it starts with, are you a competitor? Because if you're not, like, I can't really help you. You can't really help, you got to want to compete for whatever it is, right? And competing is against you. You don't got to tear somebody else down. That's bullshit, pardon me. I mean, maybe on the court, you're going to beat somebody off the dribble or whatever it is, but we're talking about competing in a way with the man in the mirror or the woman in the mirror, so to speak. And then the last part you said about you have to have good people around you. So that's the 5th segment of the book, mentors, have people around you. So again, we were supposed to meet, man. It really is true. But what do you tell somebody? I don't want it, this is not about me. The gentleman who came up to you, the young man who came up to you on the stage, is just an example. I have no idea who it was, doesn't matter. And he reached out. He writes back to you in 6 months, a year, whatever. I don't know. It's hypothetical. He said, Coach Graham, I'm losing it. I've fallen off the wagon. I've lost my true north. I've lost my devotion. How do I get back? Because that will happen. I mean, again, this is like, once again, I'm older than you, of course. Yeah. The data, the input that I had coming at me is pale in comparison to what maybe you had coming at you at 44. I'm 71. The kids today, at again, 17, 18, 19, it's unthinkable, what comes at them, but there's still this human part that you're obviously deeply connected with. So how do you tell that guy, James, John, Paul, George, Ringo, whatever he is, like, how do you get them to reconnect with your obviously smart, genius, and service-based messaging? What do you do? What do you tell that person? Because I want you to teach somebody who might be listening to this for a moment who doesn't have access to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Well, just in that moment, give thanks that you're aware in that moment that you want to come back. That's like the greatest moment. It's totally okay to not be here all the time and to fall off the wagon. The first thing you do is put the shovel down if you're digging your own grave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like when someone comes and talks to me like that, first thing I say is give thanks for this moment. Isn't that amazing to be here? And from the grace of our creator, grace of source, we can start working right now. That's the cool thing about healing, is you don't have to suffer anymore. And you just start with your intention. My intention is for well-being. My intention is to take care of ourselves. And then I say, okay, guess what it is? It's a practice every day.
Sure.
I already know you're talking to me because you didn't practice for the last 6 months. Don't worry. And for whatever reason you got off track, whatever the trigger was, that's no problem. We can check on that. But all you do is come back to right now. You want to practice right now? And that's all we do. And I say, all you got to do, let's take a breath. Let's tell ourselves we love ourselves unconditionally. Get right back to the basics. Let's forgive whatever we think hurt us and took us here. Forgive ourselves for getting off track. And right away in that moment, Barry, we're already on track.
That is true. No, I hear you. I think it's so refreshing and such an important message. And
then we get into the basics. Okay, are you exercising? When people are really depressed and low, take a walk. Real basic stuff. You got to get in your body, move your body, take a walk. Are you eating food? Okay, let's get food in your belly, right? The basics. Then let's work on, okay, some mental training stuff. But little meditation does help you start to be mindful, not just reacting to everything. You just kind of start to get the basics together. Do you have light coming in the space where you are? Literally, I tell people, open your windows up, open your blinds up, get fresh air coming through. Is your room clean? Did you clean your room? The basics, like real basic stuff. Did you exercise today? Is your room clean? Is there fresh air? Did you meditate? Like all this stuff. It's like we start there. You'd be surprised. Take a 30-minute walk. You already feel better. You're already kind of like, oh, I'm back on the right track. Now, if you got some real big trauma to work through, heavy stuff, then of course we link you up with a therapist. We start that work, right? We start to, okay, let's go do your work. But the basics have to be taken care of. Every day I exercise, every day without question, because that gets me into my body. It makes me feel better. It makes the emotions better. Then I'm way better at being present after, which I have to practice doing every day. Some days harder, some days easier. Then I got to make sure I get food in my belly, right? All these things. I got to drink water. Those are the basics to help someone come back. And then self-love. So I love myself unconditionally. One of the first affirmations I ever learned at 19 when I was healing, when I'd fallen off the wagon and I was like, all right, time to get back on. She said, write down that I love myself unconditionally 10 times and say it to yourself 10 times every day. And I was like, what is this corny stuff? then I started to do it and I started to feel better, Barry. And I was like, my God, that matters, you know? And then I started practicing being present. Most of the time when we're in a bad place, we're way in the future, way in the past, reliving stuff. We got to come back and practice being mindful, right? Come back to this stuff, back to where our feet are. And the whole word is practice. So I say this, are you willing to practice now? Do you want to take that responsibility for yourself? Because if you don't, there's nothing anyone can do.
Right.
I've had 50 great people trying to help one person, and that one person didn't want to help themselves. So it didn't matter. And eventually I've learned that I don't take that personal. Early on, I used to crush my heart. Then I was like, hey, I'll be here when you're ready. And I just say that, hey, whenever you're ready, I'm here. But until then, can't do nothing for you. But I'm with you. I still love you. There's no judgment.
Right. I mean,
again, if you don't want to do it, you're going to suffer.
Yes. That's incredibly powerful, really. Of course, now I'm putting all this together. For anyone who cares at all, this is the longest conversation Graham and I have ever had. Again, we met for 3 minutes on a stage in where were we? Oh, Soldier Town last weekend.
Oakland, yeah, over in
Oakland, and I don't know, a 10-minute phone call the other day, and now we're doing this. So I am drinking from a fire hose also right now, just to be clear, and I'm starting to think about, I'll do an outro, I'll do my best producer and play an outro to your music when we leave, but how powerful the music is in this whole mix of everything else that we said, because we all respond to different triggers, and I'm a lyrical savant. I must know the lyrics to 5,000 songs, and I have no idea how I learned them. Truthfully, though, I irritate the crap out of my friends, but because I can recount so many. But it is interesting how we all learn, and so I think what you've done with the music is just it's so smart. But again, you're just following what's the beat in your head, no pun intended, right? And saying, how do I help? How do I serve? How do I help? How do I serve?
Now remember that when you hear the beat, it's 7 years later that these songs exist. So when you hear something, it'll be subtle at first. You just got to stick with it. By the time it manifests like a redwood tree, you can plant that seed. The redwood tree is going to be immense, but it's going to be at the pace it's going to be at.
Yep.
And if you stick with it, you'll see the big, beautiful thing, but you got to stay with it. So that's where the competitive nature comes in. It's the compassion to stay with the pace, to stay with the pace at which manifestation occurs,
No, I mean, again, that's right. I think we teach competitive spirit. Again, I'm writing about it right now in competition, sometimes in the wrong context. Because who are you really competing against, Graham?
Yeah, right. Yourself. It's you versus you.
Right. That's it.
That's
right.
It.
You don't have to hate this dude, hate that dude. Out on the court, you go try to win, do the best you can, but you're really competing, with yourself. I saw a young guy in Oakland last weekend. Can't believe it's already almost a week ago. I thought he was the best player in the gym. I was very sad to hear that where's he going? He's going to go to a JUCO. Not that there's anything wrong with junior college, you went whatever, but it does mean that. And he was a smart kid and a nice kid and a warm kid, whatever, but wasn't paying attention to the grades. But I guess we have to make sure that, look, grades are not everything, but they do help you. I don't know. What's your thought about grades? Let me ask you that. You're the guru here. I'm going to shut you
man. Well, first of all, no one's ever asked me my GPA ever in life as I got older. So grades.
I hope they don't ask mine.
It's a mathematical metric to judge somebody. Grades never were able to encapsulate my intelligence ever. So my opinion on grades is it's a way to judge a certain metric, but it doesn't encapsulate judging in totality. And I'm not like against it, but I also see the harsh limitations here in California. UCs don't do SAT scores anymore.
Right.
That was so intuitive to me to never do that. But for some reason, it takes a while for them to go, wait, stop judging on this score, on this numeric thing. I have a song I'll share with you called Magic with the Math. And it's all about where the math comes from. And the math comes from being in the magic. But we need to learn to judge the magic. We don't quite know how to do that. So grades, yes. More important than grades would just be perseverance to me. So GPA for me stands for gratitude, perseverance, and awareness. That's really what I'm looking for a GPA. So whether this kid, I went to a JC.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Some like super bright guy, but right? Yeah. So what does it matter if I went to Harvard or not? It's my perseverance that matters. How do you track that? More than like the kid going to a JC, if they have perseverance, gratitude, and awareness, there's no stopping them. You know what I mean? Like, so I've seen a bunch of 4.0 kids lose it. But at the same time, I'm not saying no.
No, I get it. I get
it. To advance it. Yeah.
It's somebody else's way to judge who you are and what you're capable of, right? And that's not who you are, what you're capable. I mean, it's underrated, if we will. I think what I meant more, and I asked a bad question. Was and I know you got to jump, so you just kind of give me the high five, and we'll
we got to wrap up here in a sec, Barry. So
okay, great. So what I meant was, so this young man was, he at this moment in time, he's walking the earth to hopefully get a college scholarship and maybe make his living as a professional basketball player somehow. So that is unfortunately fortunately a metric, I don't know what the right word is, to kind of potentially move him along in this ascension that he is trying to make. So there is some focus there. And again, my grades sucked, and I've made it this far, and whatever. But it's an interesting point of focus that we won't have time to do so for now, but maybe we can redo this again. I want to leave with this because we have just a few seconds. So the first thing, I sat down and you said, be where your feet are. That's the first thing I heard you say.
Okay.
I mean, you said some other things to introduce
Yeah.
yourself, but the first kind of piece of profundity was be where your feet are. So that was your opening statement. Let's close with just tell me what that means and whatever.
Yeah, no, it means literally to be where your feet are. You know, it's like you said, that the young man at the junior college, for him, for example, it's so driven to get to the NBA. We're so concerned that one little thing happens, we won't make it or whatever it is. And it's like, if you can work on being where you are and then where you are going all in, it's always going to work. So being where your feet are is a place to help your mind not just be anxiously running to some place where you think everything's going to be okay. You know, that place where your feet at is right here, right now. And we do have to train ourselves to be here. We have to train our minds to be here. And so your feet, just a cool little saying.
No, I loved it. I was like, boy, you know, I love this guy. So I really am grateful. You know, I know you got to go, and much of that is my fault because I was late getting on this. My Zoom chops need help, but I thank you enough. What I'll do is I'll attach to this this segment how to get a hold of you if anybody really, you know, wants to or wants to find some of your website stuff. And of course, you sent me some things, which with your permission, I will kind of put out there and share for people, because
Awesome.
I think what you're doing, Graham, is I mean, it's just, you know, there needs to be 50 of you, 500 of you. So no,
Thanks.
no, I mean it, you know, for real. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and all that sort of stuff. And we'll talk again soon.
That's it. Okay. All right, Barry. Call me soon, man. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm grateful. Grateful to have
That
you.
was too loud. Gosh, sorry.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Okay, man. We'll talk soon.
Stay safe.
Okay, cool.